Welcome to Life in Times of Cotto. I am your host, Jay Cotto. And in today's segment, I want to ask a question, or actually a question that I saw. And I'm going to sit here in thought along with this episode, which I think might actually be pretty cool. But the question is what is your definition of good? And I think that that's a really interesting question, because if you ask anyone else, their definition of good is, oh, I feel good, or I smell good, or I dress good, you know, and or it could be a correlation of those things. Those things all lining up to make you feel good, right? And in my personal experience, I don't think about it that way. I do a lot of self-reflecting, and I do that daily. And I do that almost constantly. And in doing so, when I heard that question, I thought it was really interesting because my definition of good is exactly that. It's self reflection, right? It's going back in your life, when you were a child, when you were a teenager, when you were a young adult, even now, right? But going back and self reflecting, thinking about all those things that changed you, whether it's for the better or the worst, or if it was a learning lesson, all those things. And they could be the same. It could be a bad thing that taught you something, a good thing that taught you something. They're one and the same. We're always learning something, right? So let me not, try to make it different. It's not fucking different. Everything's a learning lesson. But the point I'm trying to make is my definition of good is going back, self-reflecting through the years, and realizing how much those little things in time changed me, and how I use them to become a little worse or a little better. And I'm going to give you an example. It's probably not a good example, and it is a good example. And it's a relatively sad one, and I'm going to share it though. But and it's something that stayed with me, and I always remembered it. And even now that I'm 47 years old, right, I remember it. And I was a child. I was probably maybe 7 years old tops. But anyway, I was walking to school with my dad, and at the time, Voltron was hot. Like that was like the dopest shit, right? And I was watching that. So we were walking to school together, and I was like, "Hey, Dad, wouldn't it be cool if I could be like that guy, like Voltron, and or one of those lions in that show?" For those who are familiar with it. Um, And his answer, now I don't, his answer was, I'm pretty sure it wasn't meant maliciously though, but it's something that I remembered. But his answer was like, well, that's ridiculous. That's stupid. It's a cartoon. Right. And I remember at that time how destructive that was for me at that age. Right. And it made me feel bad. Even then, even as a child, it made me feel bad, because I thought, hey, man, I thought it was kind of cool. And you just fucking destroyed my whole outlook. Right. Um, But that being said, that changed me. That at that moment, that changed me, whether I knew it at that point or I didn't. It did change me because I do remember it. So remembering that and having children now, I apply myself very differently. It's not something that I would do or say to them. And again, I don't know what the mindset was. I don't know that it was, done intentionally and he wasn't paying attention. He said something that he shouldn't have said. Either way, I remember it. And that for me is what makes me good. I self reflect tremendously on things that have happened to me in the past. And again, good, bad, or indifferent. I think about those things, I remember those things, and I try to apply them in a way that's beneficial, constructive. And again, there are things that I've taken away from past things that make me not the greatest person. But even in doing that, I self reflect and remember those things and just say, hey, shit, man, this is not making me good at all. But answering that question, what makes me good is exactly that. Doing a lot of self reflecting and applying all the negatives in life that I've learned and that have come my way, and apply them in a positive way, in a way that is constructive, not just for myself, but for my family, for the people I come in contact with. I do that regularly. So that would be my definition of that. I would love to hear everybody's feedback on what they feel would their definition of good is. Because again, there's so many different angles to it. There's so many different ways that you can answer that. But I'd be very interested in hearing what people's definition of good is. And I hate to do this, but I'm gonna. If you would all be so kind, like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you want to hear, what you don't want to hear, what you loved and what you hated. But Jay Cotto, thank you for listening. Thank you for lending me your ears. Do what you do it well, do it the best way you know how. I am out. Peace.